synchronicity happens when we align with the flow of the universe, rather than insisting the universe flow our way. A quote from Why We Are Born, Remembering Our Purpose Through the Casket Records by Akimi G.
Good evening, Undertakers, and welcome to the Empty Casket Podcast. I am Bill Bryan, and this is Tanya Gilroy.
Greetings.
In tonight's episode, we're going to take you with us on an investigation we did at Theater at North in Scranton, Pennsylvania. But first, a little housekeeping.
Our Mid-Orange investigation has been moved now to April 30th due to some scheduling conflicts on their side. Also, around on May 15th, if you're in the NEPA area, which is northeastern Pennsylvania, there's going to be a paranormal craft and artisan fair hosted at the 44th Cemetery by the Wyoming Valley Ghost Tours from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. in 44th, Pennsylvania.
Be sure to check out the Wyoming Valley Ghost Tours Facebook page, as they were also the host of the investigation that we're about to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a great group. They tried to give us a fantastic event, and it was a lot of fun. And we hope to work with them more in the future. So, on to the main story.
Mm-hmm.
So the Theater at North in Scranton, Pennsylvania, specifically North Scranton, is a old school. It was the North Scranton Junior High. It was built between 1922 and 1924 in a late Gothic revival, which just means it's all brick and stone. It looks really damn cool. And it's kind of an iconic building in Scranton. It has this huge 4-story clock tower that sits on one side of the valley, so you can actually see out over the entire valley into neighboring towns and whatnot. It's pretty cool. It operated as a junior high school until 1987, and where it closed down and just sat decaying. It is right next door to my elementary school, Neil Armstrong Elementary School. And I drove past this every single day and stopped a few times to go and look inside, and I saw it was crumbling down and all that. But I really wanted to get inside of it and go exploring, and I never had the opportunity to. I just sat there decaying and just crumbling down. We all assumed that eventually it's going to get torn down. But around 2005, it was bought by the Goodwill Industries of Northeast PA, and the building was renovated in 2015. So the classrooms were turned into apartments. The former boys' gymnasium was turned into a community room so they could hold events. And the former girls' gymnasium was turned into a storage area for the residents. And the apartments are exclusively for senior citizens. In 2016, it reopened as the Goodwill Industries Gerald T. Langan Apartments for Senior Citizens. But in addition to the apartments, and the main reason that we were there, was that the former auditorium in the center of the building became an 800-seat theater called Theater at North. And that is the primary reason that we were there investigating. So a little bit about the haunted history of it. So my dad actually went to this school. And so when I saw that this popped up as one of their events, I really wanted to go because it's a building I've always wanted to get into since I was a little kid. And that's the primary reason I kind of talked Tanya into going with me. But we went and talked to my dad, and because I knew he went there, and asked him if he knew any ghost stories about the place. And, well, he didn't. And growing up in Scranton, I've never heard a ghost story about the place. So we went into this assuming we're going to get nothing. And really, it was just an excuse for me to go, scratch something off my bucket list, which was get inside that building. However, talking to the John and Carrie Ann of Wyoming Valley Ghost Tours, they said that there was a few previous students that did report unexplained noises and things moving on their own within the building. But the paranormal events really seemed to start after they started renovation, which seems to be the case a lot of the times. Renovation tends to give a little spike to paranormal activity. And that the residents report seeing a man around the building that they have named Norm. And that is short for paranormal. So they see him walking around the building, coming into their rooms and whatnot. And nobody really had any idea who or what it might be. Well, until we went there. But we'll get into that later. So as I said earlier, this event was hosted by the Wyoming Valley Ghost Tours. They started in October of 2018 to open historic places in the Wyoming Valley up for public ghost hunting. They are run by John and Carrie Ann, who were great people. We got to talk to them quite a bit that night, and they were really nice. They put on a great event. They try to keep it as authentic as you can with such a large, inexperienced group. And, overall, it was a great time, and we'll definitely be doing more events with them in the future.
Yeah, they were very professional. They knew what they were talking about. And for people who never did that before to people who are semi-professional or at least, have had a couple haunts under their belts, it was easy for anybody. They went over all the equipment they were using, explained the layout. They had good organization of how they were going to do the tour. And,
oh, yeah.
Overall, it was a very professional and very friendly and fun experience.
So, during the investigation, we went to 4 areas. The boiler room, the community center, a undeveloped area, and the actual theater itself, and primarily the stage. So that was the investigation, was those four areas. But our investigation didn't end there. We actually had a 5th thing happen, but that's kind of, well, we'll just talk about that more towards the end. That was a completely different experience and fully unplanned. So the event started off in the theater. They kind of gave us a history of the building and a rundown of a lot of the ghost hunting equipment, which, I mean, for the most part, we were familiar with just about all of it. I think the only thing we weren't was that little triangle thing, the Flux 2, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little box that has sensors on either side, and it flashes blue until one of the sensors are triggered, and then on one side it makes it green, and the other side it makes it red. So you could ask yes/no questions and get responses that way through it. I think everything else we were familiar with. So the first place that we went, because they broke us up into smaller groups, groups of 4. It was you, me, and 2 women, Sandy and Michelle. The 4 of us went down to the boiler room, and John was going to be in the basement the entire night in the boiler room. He was going to be running the GeoBox app. I don't remember exactly which GeoBox app it was he's using. I'm not really a big fan of those apps.
Yeah, it was, I forget what name it was. I did ask, but I do know that it was a paid app. So they did say that you did have to pay for it. And, they did say in the beginning that they were very skeptical of apps and stuff like that at one point, but found that with this app in particular, that it provided the same, the same resource or the same information that, other equipment can do as well. And they highly recommended it. I personally wasn't a big fan of it.
And
Neither
neither
was
was I.
Bill.
Nope.
Maybe because we're just not app people. I'm very skeptical of them, of apps. Not to say that it's not a good app. It may work for other people. It's just not something for us.
Yeah, my two big issues with that was, one, because it's an app, it can be pre-programmed. It could be, there's a microphone on your phone. It could be listening and then give out words that relate it to what you're asking. Not knowing the code, it's hard to know for sure. The other thing is just the geobox in general, or the portal, which is kind of the same thing. I don't particularly like it. It's, for those of you who don't know, the actual geobox is a spirit box that's run through a noise reducer, and then a reverb, and then it's amplified, which I think is a bad idea. I mean, a lot of the EVPs that you end up getting and stuff live in that noise, so you could be killing a lot of EVPs. And then the reverb, they say it's added to make voices clearer, but I don't know about you, but for me, it makes it harder to hear anything.
It was hard for me to actually hear things. I don't know. Maybe because I was just already turned off by it, that I didn't really give it, a good go. But I mean, like I said, they seem to be very happy with it. They claim they received a lot of good results with it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to completely put it down. Like I said, it's not for us. I mean, I don't think personally we would use this doing our own private investigations. I had no problem with them doing it there. To each his own, basically. Yep. And I think what we're learning is that everybody has their own techniques, and some people like certain equipment, and that's just how it is. When you go do these things, you're gonna find that there's certain equipment that you're just drawn to, that you find that you get more information from, and then there's other equipment where you're just, I don't care for this, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, for us, Estes method is a big one for us. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where you fall on this, but two of the other pieces of equipment that I kind of really like is the REM pod, or in our case, the coffin pod, and dowsing rods.
I like the dowsing rods. I mean, I have to get used to them and more familiar with them. But I don't know. I still fall in the line of, if you're not using them properly.
Oh, well, yeah, that goes for all the equipment, yeah.
And that's another thing. And that's something they did emphasize, that, if the equipment is not used properly, then you will receive false positives.
Right. And, yeah, I don't want to cast any aspersions on John and Carrie Ann for the equipment they were using. They were very clear in the descriptions of how to use the equipment and everything on how to use them properly. Because they were very well aware of that you can get false positives, and they stated that, and so they did a really good job of making that clear.
Yeah, I mean, they really went into description of each item, what it did, and, kind of, do's and don'ts when using it. And, they were very clear that, you might walk away from this experience with absolutely nothing. They don't promise an experience, which I liked, because they weren't trying to sell you anything. They weren't trying to sell you an experience. They were just hosting. And they said, you may get something, you may walk away with nothing. It happens. And that's just how the dice roll.
Yep. Really, they're just there to give you an opportunity to investigate the place, and for those who don't have equipment, provide some.
Yeah. Yep. And they were very, receptive to allowing us to use our own equipment. We did get permission beforehand what we can and cannot use.
Yep, we weren't allowed to use any video cameras. We can't post any video that we found. However, we did get permission to talk about it, and we had 2 EVPs that we captured during the night that we'll share with you as we get to those sections.
Yeah. So as Bill stated, our group's first tour was to the boiler room. which was exactly probably how you can imagine a dark, dingy series of rooms with giant metal canisters of that used to be the boilers.
It was very Freddy Krueger-esque.
Yes, it looked very much like something out of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Yep. So that first room, it was the four of us, our host John, and our chaperone. Each group has a chaperone who is one of the ushers for the theater, just to help us get around and so we don't get lost. So we set up a few pieces of equipment. We had our two coffin pods, one in the back, or each one was in a different back room, right?
Yes.
Yep. Then we had my K2 meter out towards some steps towards the back of the room. And then one of the other women with us was holding one of the other K2 meters. Mm-hmm. And we had the Flux 2, the little pyramid thing out in the middle. And we had a paranormal music box at the doorway in case anything came in. And then John was running the GeoBox app. And we had about 20 to 25 minutes per location. Now, the first part of the boiler room, we did mostly the GeoBox app. And so about 6 times they claimed the name Billy came through the GeoBox. Now, I don't know about you, but at the time, I never heard Billy. In listening to the recording of it, I only heard Billy twice.
I probably didn't hear it until you actually played back. Which it did sound, that one did sound like Bill or Billy.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really be certain. But then again, I've heard similar things come through when we did Estes method. That sound,
yeah,
Billy or something similar to that, does come through, and you can easily claim that it's speaking Billy.
Yeah, again, going back to that GeoBox app, it especially with the reverb on it, it has so many different sounds coming through. I wonder if some of the things that were being heard was just audio pareidolia.
And that could be. I think that's something that we always keep in the back of our head. Is it just, us creating the words and then kind of running with it, making something out of nothing. I think our best experiences came from using the dowsing rods,
mm-hmm.
which at first I was kind of also very skeptical of, again, because if they're not used properly, you get false readings.
Yep.
But we did enough kind of experimentations where John would say, point to Bill or point to, what was it? Michelle was the one holding them.
Yep.
So point to Sandy.
Yeah, I think we had it point to everybody in the room.
Yeah, and then
you moved across the room.
And then I silently motioned to John, I'm going to move across the room and see if it can point to me again.
Which it did. Yep.
So that was kind of, that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I've had a lot more experience with dowsing rods prior to that evening than you did. I mean, I've been using dowsing rods since I was a kid. They're pretty legit. Yeah, I have no issue with dowsing rods. The one cool thing with the dowsing rods, though, was that at this point the K2 meter was sitting on the chair next to Michelle, mm-hmm. and it went off every time the dowsing rods pointed or moved at all. It would go off.
Yeah, and that was something that we were experiencing too, was the K2 meter was going off. And then ours, actually, which was close by, but further away from the group. It was sitting kind of like on a ledge.
Yeah, it was about 10, 15 feet away from the closest person.
And then we heard...
like a bang.
And
back in that back corner.
That went off. That K2 meter went off.
Mm-hmm.
Also, some of our coffin pods went off. At first I thought...
We took one of the coffin pods and moved it to the center of the room.
Mm-hmm.
And then, that went off a couple times.
Yeah.
As did the Flux 2.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously I was making sure that it wasn't, John or myself, because we were the ones standing closer to those,
mm-hmm.
not making it go off. But you really have to practically be on top of those things.
Yeah.
make them.
So the Flux 2 he had set to a 1 foot distance. So you had to be within a foot of it to set it off. And there was nobody within a foot of it the entire night. And then our coffin pods, you have to get within 6 inches of it for it to go off. And outside of us moving it or people testing it, nobody was anywhere near it. Like they were all several feet away.
Yeah, I mean, when I went to go pick them up, I mean, I literally had to put my hands on them for them to actually start going off. So
now, I don't know if you know this, but one of them is more sensitive than the other, and the reason for that is the one I painted the inside with a conductive paint, so that when it's closed up, the internals of it are shielded away from outside interaction. So it's only the antenna that causes it. So one of them is more sensitive than the other.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. But what we got out of that, I mean, if basically there was a boy, a male, apparently around the age of 5.
Yep.
Was either named Billy or was reaching out to Bill. At one point, they claimed to hear the word demon.
Yeah, I heard demon. And then the as soon as that came through, the sounds on the geobox sounded a little bit different.
And there was some kind of how they said it sounded like it switched gears. So like at times it sounded like you were talking to a child, and then maybe there were other spirits there trying to come through or prohibiting said child from speaking further.
And all this kind of happened leading up to that bang that we heard in the back. Once we heard that bang, there was very little activity after that. And it's almost like we chased something out.
Yeah, and it, you know, if there was a child there, 5 years old, really wouldn't coincide with the school itself, considering the school was mainly for older children.
Yeah, it was a junior high school. However, we did find out that there are mines under the building. So it could have, they did use children in the mines. It very well could have been, if that was an actual child spirit coming from the mines.
Yeah. And that's something that we do have to consider is that, what was there before that building? What was in place prior to it being constructed? Was there a series of mines that were used? Could there have been a child in there that, perished or just worked there and just, was drawn to that spot?
Yeah, unfortunately, they were not very good at keeping track of those who died in the mines, especially if they were children. However, one of the coolest things, these are all experiences that we had while we were there. One of the cooler things that we can actually share with you is we did capture an EVP in the boiler room. I believe it was Michelle asked if you feel, do you feel trapped here? And this is while we were using the geobox. And you could actually hear a whisper come up over the sound of the geobox. And so right now we're going to put in the raw version of it, followed immediately by a version of it where I cleaned up some of the background noise.
Do you feel trapped here? Do you feel trapped here?
All right, so maybe you heard it, maybe you didn't. It took a little while before I heard what it said. And then Tanya didn't really hear it at all until I slowed it down by 25%. So we're going to play that version of the clip for you now.
Do you feel trapped here?
So yeah, to me, it's a lot clearer once it's slowed down by a little bit. Do you feel trapped here? Yes.
I can tell you I heard something. I don't know if it was a yes.
I thought it was a yes. So we actually have, we're going to be putting any EVPs that we find on any investigation up on YouTube. So you could go to our YouTube channel, Empty Casket Paranormal, and listen for yourself and see what you hear. We won't tell you what we hear till we play it a couple times, so you could kind of try to hear it for yourself. You could leave a comment and see if you hear what we hear. But that was pretty much it for the boiler room. There was a lot of experiences, some of which with the geobox, which were kind of questionable. Some with the K2, which when when Michelle was holding the K2 were questionable because it is sensitive to vibration. But when they were like sitting on a chair or on a ledge and it went off, that's a little bit more, gives a little more validity to it. Coffin pods went off, the Flux 2 went off. So, all in all, the boiler room I thought was a success.
I mean, if anything, it was pretty cool just to see how the equipment was worked, how John conducts the investigation,
Mm-hmm.
what they allow you to do. So overall, for me, I will be honest, I didn't feel anything down there. I didn't
No, me
feel
neither.
like we received anything, that is beyond questionable. But as an experience, as being able to, do the investigation, I found it quite entertaining and fun.
Mm-hmm. So the next area that we went to was the community room, which used to be the boys' gymnasium. That was a difficult room to do. They had a REM pod in there, one of the more expensive ones that has the temperature sensor in it,
Mm-hmm.
and that was going off constantly because the air vents were setting it off because of the temperature.
Now, our coffin pods were not going off because it
We don't
doesn't
have
the
temperature. Yeah, and it was also kind of a noisy room to begin with because of all the air
ventilation,
vents.
yeah. So you had that the humming sound constantly going.
Yep. So Sandy and Michelle stayed in the main area with the tables, and they were doing some spirit box and dowsing stuff. Tanya and I went first into like a back closet area, which is like this concrete closet. Yeah. And we used the Mel meter in there and did some EVP session, but we didn't really get anything in there. I think the Mel meter went off once. Yeah, so we didn't stay in the closet very long. We came back out. We talked to Sandy and Michelle to see what they were getting, and they weren't getting a whole lot. So then there was a kitchen off to one side, so we went in there, again with the Mel meter and the recorder for EVPs. And we did capture an EVP there. And this was actually kind of one of the cooler events of the night because Sandy was out there doing the dowsing rods. I said, hey, if there's anybody here, if you want to help me play a little prank, Sandy's out there holding the dowsing rods. Why don't you go out there and kind of knock them around a little bit, make them go crazy, and have a little fun with her? So we captured a EVP at that point. And so we're going to play the raw version of it, followed by the cleaned up version of it. And we'll play that now. How would you like to have a little bit of fun with us? In the other room is a woman named Sandy who has dowsing rods in her hands. Make them swing from side to side really fast. How would you like to have a little bit of fun with us? In the other room is a woman named Sandy who has dowsing rods in her hands. Make them swing from side to side really fast. So about 5 or 6 seconds after I ask my question, you hear little EVP come through. And now what I hear is, okay.
Yeah, and I heard it too after you had to show exactly where it was at and you cleaned it up a little bit. I did hear okay. I mean, it's very faint, but we did hear it okay.
But what's really cool about that is maybe 2 minutes after I asked that question, we went out and we asked if Michelle and Sandy were getting anything. And they said, yeah, they had someone come through who said they were a teacher, but they didn't really like teaching. And
that she knows she's dead.
And that she knows she's dead. That came through on the spirit box. And I said, well, what about the dowsing rods? Did anything happen with that? And Sandy goes, yeah, like 2 minutes ago, they started going like all crazy, just going back and forth. And that was really weird. And I'm like, well, that's awesome because we asked any spirits around to do that. Just to kind of screw with you. And it's something that we asked that they didn't know about. So the fact that happened was pretty awesome. And then we got the EVP that said, okay. And then it actually happened. I thought that was really cool.
So, yeah, that was the biggest thing that happened to us there. Then we went to the undeveloped area, which was like a series of rooms, huge rooms. that were in mid-construction. I guess, I don't know what the story was, if why they stopped construction or if they were continuing on eventually, but there was a lot of equipment there. Or...
Yeah, I think the one room had doors to the outside, so they're just using that one for storage of like snowblowers and lawnmowers and that. And then the other rooms were they just hadn't gotten to them yet.
We got absolutely nothing, and neither
No,
did
neither.
Sandy and Michelle.
No, there was
It
really
was
nothing going on there.
Absolutely dead. I mean, the dowsing rods worked for like a minute. I don't even know if the
it pointed to you, and we didn't get any EVPs or anything.
No, we didn't get anything like
The
that.
the one room did have a noose hanging from the middle of it, which I think was just there as kind of a
Creep factor?
Creep factor, yeah. It worked. I actually hung one of the coffin pods from it to see if anything would happen. But
Now, we didn't receive anything. However, there were other groups that had different experiences of their own throughout the night. And some didn't receive things in areas where we received
stuff, yeah. And it really comes down to, you have to be asking the right questions. You have to have the right energy, or spirits could follow you from room to room, and so.
And just like people, you're comfortable talking to certain people than others. So some people just were more receptive and received better information.
Yep.
On a personal note, I think I was more closed off, only because I felt, too much was going on. I felt overwhelmed. I'm curious to know how much more we could have gotten if it was just us.
Yeah, another thing to keep in mind was that night that we did that was the first time the theater at North had ever been investigated. So it's possible that spirits there were just like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, I mean, that was the truly the first time anyone was ever allowed in there to investigate.
Now, I talked to John and Carrie Ann after the fact, like a couple of days later, because they did another investigation the following night, and they said the second night they got so much more, and I'm wondering if maybe
stirred the pot.
We went in and stirred the pot a little bit, kind of gave them a taste of what's going on, and then they were more receptive to communicating the following evening. Yeah. So I would like to go back again at some point.
Yeah, once it's kind of gone through a couple of cycles and the ghosts are familiar.
Yeah. I'd also like to see if, that which we're going to talk about later is still there.
But how I felt was like, if I was a spirit, there's people in all different parts trying to communicate.
Yep.
It's like you're being pulled in so many directions. Where do you go? And you're probably being asked the same question over and over again. Personally, to me, that would get very tiring. And if I had no idea what the hell was going on, I wouldn't be open to talking.
Yeah. So, after the undeveloped areas, we went back to the theater, specifically the stage. And so we set some equipment up around. And Tanya and I went off on our own again. We went into the corner with the spirit box. And we didn't have our equipment to do the Estes method. So Tanya just kind of put the speaker up to her ear and tried to close out everything around us. And so what we got there was, you asked, is there anybody here? And you heard through it, I'm here. We asked if they were a performer. Got yes. Were you an actor, a musician, or a dancer? Got musician. And so I asked, well, what instrument did you play? I mean, I play a couple instruments myself, so what did you play? And we never got a definitive answer. However, what you were hearing was kind of answering it.
Yeah, I was hearing piano music coming through. Now, when you listen to a spirit box, you get random radio stations just going, erratic throughout the whole thing. And you have to kind of learn how to tune them out sometimes, because you're not listening for the radio stations. You're trying to listen for something else. However, I took it as, if I'm hearing piano music, if that's what's coming up. Now, there's so many radio stations. How many are actually playing piano music at that time?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the cool thing about that was, you said you were hearing the piano music come through.
mhm.
So I said, well, were you a piano player? And then what I heard was on the other side of the stage where they were using that Geobox app again, immediately I heard the word yes come through. And then when I asked Carrie Ann, because Carrie Ann was in the theater most of the night, I asked her if they had gotten any musicians come through other groups. And she said, yeah, a couple of the other groups got people come through who said they were a piano player.
Mhm.
So that kind of
Yeah,
adds a little bit more validity
But
to what we
again,
heard.
another problem was that I couldn't really concentrate on the spirit box because
There was other noises
on the
and
stage
stuff.
was the Geo app that the other two women were using with Carrie Ann. So it's hard to kind of not listen to that as well. And I kept on thinking like maybe the questions Bill's asking is going to come through that.
Which did seem to happen when I asked if you were a piano player, because I heard the yes through their app. But we also heard somebody say that oh, Billy's back, thinking it was the kid from the boiler room. So that's when we kind of stopped the spirit box session and went over to see what was going on there. And they got Billy come through a couple more times, which again I didn't hear Billy. Hey Mommy came through in a kid's voice. The one thing I did hear through it was somebody asked, "What's this theater called?" And I heard At North.
Carrie Ann heard that too.
Yeah. However, when I went back and listened to the audio again, I did not hear At North. I heard it at the time that we listened to it, but not in the recording. So that could have been a case of pareidolia.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that came through towards the end was Board and Leave Here. One kind of neat thing about Leave Here was that came through just seconds before John came over the radio, said, all right, everyone pack up your things. We're going to meet back at the theater and kind of go over what everyone experienced. So that could have been a little foreshadowing.
That could have been.
So yeah, that was kind of our investigation. We all sat down in the auditorium again and kind of went through what all the groups had experienced in each of the locations. And one of the things that we wanted to emphasize here was at one point a guy came through in the community room who said that he died a week ago and that his daughter was there cleaning his apartment and that he enjoyed the events there. And another group said, oh yeah, we had that same guy come through in the theater and said that he enjoyed the shows. And they did give a name. We're not going to give the name for respect of the dead and the daughter, and leave them to have a little anonymity. So we're not going to give the name, but the same name came through for both groups, and like, oh, that's interesting, because it just so happened that the daughter's name, which also came through, and we're not going to give that name out either, we met a resident as we were preparing to walk into the building by that name.
Yeah. So the overall experience doing the investigation with Theater of the North, it was a fun experience.
Mm-hmm.
I probably, if it would have just ended there, I probably would have walked away saying it was a cool experience. I like how Wyoming Valley Ghost Tours runs their investigations. Very professional. However, I don't feel we received anything. It was a good run through. It was a good way of getting our feet wet.
Yep.
And yes, I would do another one with them, but I didn't feel like we got anything to definitely solidify there was something there. That was until that very moment when that one group brought up that one incident, and I looked at Bill and I pointed to the woman's name on the sheet I had written, an hour earlier?
2 hours,
2 hours earlier. And I said, oh my God, we definitely need to look into this.
So what happened there was, we parked and we're getting the equipment out of the truck. Now, I wear a during an investigation, I wear a old military vest that has a bunch of pouches for ammunition, magazines, and whatnot. And I use those pouches to hold the different pieces of equipment so that we can easily carry everything around. So while we're doing that, there's a woman walking her dog. And the dog dragged her over to us, which is not unusual. Dogs love me. They come over to me all the time. So we're petting the dog named Bella. And that kind of struck me because my mom had a dog named Bella. It was one of her favorite dogs. So anytime I find a dog named Bella, that kind of resonates with me a little bit. So we talked to her a little bit, told her why we were there. And she goes, oh, okay, that's interesting. Well, I hope you have a good time. And she walked away. And then she turned around and came back. And she said something that kind of knocked me off guard. Maybe you're who I'm supposed to talk to. And what do you mean? Why would you be talking to us? And she says, well, I've been seeing a man in my room. He comes out of the corner and he just stands there. And
she did emphasize other residents see him too.
Yep. And she asked if maybe we can take a look at it when we were done with our event. Yeah, sure, we'd be happy to come up and take a look and see if we can get you any answers.
And at first we were just going to take her information down and possibly, see if we can do that at a later date. But she's emphasized, she said, no, I'm not going to be in my apartment that long. I'm moving at the end of the week. That's all the information she gave us.
That and her name.
Yeah, well, yeah, that and her name. We told her we were probably not going to be done till around like 10:30. And she was like, that's fine. I will be waiting for you. Please come.
Yeah.
And we said, oh, okay, we will. And then that was that. And then when we started the investigation, they gave first a rundown of the history.
Yep. And they talked about Norman.
And that's where Norm came in. And I think she was the vice president, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
Of the theater. She said, many of the residents see a man. He comes into their apartments and they have, they don't know his name, so they call him Norm, which is short for paranormal. And that kind of solidified that, yes, apparently the residents are seeing something. We spoke to a resident who just said that same thing. She didn't tell us his name, but all right. That's two pieces of the puzzle connected. Mm-hmm. And that was interesting of itself.
Yep.
So at the end of the night, that group spoke, and that group spoke her name.
And we suddenly got really excited to go up to her room.
Only because the man's name, it's a typical name. It's something that, it's common.
Yeah.
Her name, not so much common. And when they said that, we all got we couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Yeah. So we finished up. We went and talked to John and Carrie Ann for a couple minutes, thanked them for everything. And we told them that we had met somebody and we were going to go up to their apartment and that we'd keep them informed of what happened with it. So we go up to her apartment, which took us a little while to find it. Mm-hmm. We got a little bit lost in the building. It's a big building. So we go up there, and her door was wide open, and she's on the phone. She's like, oh, yeah, they're here. I got to go. She hung up the phone. She's so excited for us to be there. And so she starts telling us a little bit about what she was seeing and all that. And then she said, I'm really sorry if I see him a little off. My father died a week ago. My jaw dropped. Because, what's your father's name? So she told us, and it was the same name that had come through of the guy that had died a week ago. So we told her what the other groups had experienced, and she started freaking out a little bit and on the verge of tears and begging us not to screw with her. We assured her that we're not messing with you. Like this actually happened here. Here's the name of the group that we were with. You can call them and ask them if you don't believe us. Like this happened. And it turned out that her father had died a week ago. We asked about, the community room, and she goes, he went to every event that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they had any kind of event, he was there.
He loved the theater.
Yeah, he would always sneak into the balcony of the theater to watch every show.
And she also said, her and her father were two peas in the pod. They were
Mhm.
best friends. They did everything together. And she, as much as he relied on her, she relied so
On him.
much on him.
Yeah.
It was a true love. And, it's heartbreaking when you lose a parent, especially when it's
You're that
someone
close.
that's close to you. Someone who is basically your right-hand man.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, as you said, jaw dropping.
Mm-hmm.
That really, I fall in a kind of a middle line between being skeptical and a believer. That kind of shifted me towards over the believer side a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because there was, aside from the possibility of her speaking to someone else, or maybe one of the ushers giving that group a little bit more information, how would those things connect? How would anyone know?
Yeah, and first off, my heart goes out to her. It sucks losing a parent. I'm very thankful that both of mine are still alive, but I've lost grandparents, and I know how that feels. And my deepest condolences to her. But holy crap, that was the most incredible paranormal experience I've had to date. And it's not even over yet.
No, it's not.
So once we kind of got over the shock of her father came through in our group, well, not in our group, but our collective event, we said, well, you called us up here for a man coming into your apartment. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? So she pointed to a corner and said, yeah, he comes out of that corner and he just stands there and watches me. And I'm like, okay, well, what they said that they see that the residents are seeing somebody walk around. She goes, oh yeah, everybody sees him. We call him Norm. So we hadn't said the name yet. So I'm like, okay, so this is lining up with what we've heard previously. And so I asked, well, what does he look like? He goes, well, he's dark. He's kind of a shadow, but he's wearing a trench coat and what looks like a bowler hat. And my brain just kind of exploded a little bit. I'm like, holy crap! This is the Hatman. So, for those of you who don't know who the Hatman is, the Hatman is a very specific shadow figure who is seen all over the world. Always seen wearing a trench coat and either a bowler hat or a fedora. And very typically just kind of comes out and watches. I've even seen him referred to as a watcher. Something from the other side that just kind of is watching our side.
And no one has any idea who or what he is. Now, mind you, there are other shadow people.
Oh, yeah.
Shadow people are entities of their own. This is like a evolved form of a shadow person, I guess you could say. Like he's one of his own kind.
Yeah.
My mother and my daughter had the experience with that. One time in my mother's kitchen faces, you can, if you look out her archway, you can see into the living room and the dining room. And one day they heard the door open, and they literally saw a shadow come through, and it was described just like that. Walk upstairs, come back downstairs, and walk out the door. And so these types of experiences happen amongst all types of people.
All over the world.
All over the world.
Now there are two other defining characteristics of the Hatman. One is that he typically shows up before or after traumatic events. Okay. Now, in the case of this particular resident, she was very sick, and she had died twice. And she said that she started seeing him after those events. And her father just passed away, which is, by anyone's measure, a traumatic event. The other characteristic is that if the Hatman comes in and he just stands there and watches, he can drain your emotions. Like you just kind of feel empty. It's not hatred, it's not joy, it's not sadness, it's just empty.
Yeah, like blank.
Yep. Now, we didn't say that. We didn't even say the word Hatman yet. And she said that when he's around, she often just feels empty. No emotion whatsoever. It's like it drained the emotion from her.
She doesn't feel like he's threatening. She's
Nope.
actually talked to him before. I don't recall her saying that he speaks back. But,
Although he did sit in the walker once.
She found him sitting in the walker once, facing her.
Mm-hmm.
So that was amazing as well.
Yeah.
But honestly, my biggest one was the father.
Yeah.
Because that I don't know, that was like that really felt like we were messengers.
Yeah, because I mean, this whole event kind of fell into place in a weird way. I happened across the advertisement for it, and it's not a place that I ever wanted to go to do ghost hunting. It was a place that just captivated me as a child, and I always wanted to go inside of. I'm like, hey, here's an opportunity to go inside of it. I can knock this little thing off my childhood bucket list. So that's why we went. That's the only reason we went. We didn't have any stories of the paranormal there. We went in there expecting nothing. Mm-hmm. And then we just happened to park in it's a big parking lot.
Go back real quick. We actually almost missed the opportunity to get a ticket. We were fortunate enough that,
there was only one ticket left. And so I had to call John and ask him to add another ticket so that both of us can go. Mm-hmm. And he was really nice about it and finally, agreed to add another ticket because they were trying to keep the group smaller due to COVID and all that, which I understand. They said, well, one more, that's fine. It just so happened that you were the 13th person.
I was lucky number 13.
Yeah.
So that alone, was amazing. And then just, us happening to park at a spot and her happening to be, walking her dog.
And it's a big parking lot. There's many other places we could have parked. But we parked there, which was the one place where she would have gotten to us in the time enough to talk to us. Mm-hmm. Her dog dragged her over to us. She walked away. And one of the big things that kind of made me feel more like it was orchestrated by an outside power was that she came back and said, maybe you're who I need to talk to. Because,
we told her what we're there for, what we do.
Mm-hmm.
She had every opportunity to tell us everything that she experienced.
Yeah. She could have ignored it and just went back inside.
She basically said, oh, that's awesome. Have fun. Good luck. I hope you catch something. And she went on her merry way only to stop, turn around as if, something told her to stop.
Yeah.
To question.
Yeah, this whole event, like all the stars just lined up. And when we told her about the Hatman and said that it was, a common thing seen all over the world, and it's that kind of it I don't know if she said anything to you after I left, but it looked like that kind of gave her a little bit of peace. Like she was more accepting. Okay, if this is something not weird, this is not something dangerous or scary. This is just this happens. It's a thing that happens around the world.
And I think she was happy to hear her father.
Yeah.
I think that's something we all want. Was when a loved one passes away, we want to know that they're okay. We want some clarification because they're just dying and you don't know. I mean, to be honest, I know there's many religious people out there. I'm not disrespecting that aspect. The truth is, we really don't know. No one has ever truly died died and come back. There's no definite proof of what happened. So a big fear of the living when our loved ones pass away is what happens to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you believe in a heaven or hell, you know, did they go there? If you believe in a reincarnation, did that happen to them? Did they just find peace? Are they okay? We don't have that. And that's scary. And that's worrisome. And it bothers you. So I'm hoping that it helps to know that, you know, maybe he's lingering. Maybe he won't be there in a week. Maybe he's not there now.
Yeah, maybe he was only still there because he was going to be with her, or maybe he's going to stay at that location. We don't know.
Maybe he had a purpose too. Maybe his purpose was
to talk to somebody so that we can be a messenger and so that she knows he's okay.
He's okay. And I know personally, if that was me, that would make me so much better to know that, you know, my loved one is still around and, you know, that there's something beyond.
This event definitely changed how I approach ghost hunting. Now, a lot of people get into it to help people, which is great. That's not why I got into it. I got into it to find the truth. I got into it for the science side of it, to capture evidence. It's not that I don't want to help people. It just wasn't my driving force. Until this. And we actually helped her. I now approach it differently. Like now helping people is forefront in my mind. I still want to capture the evidence. I still want to do the scientific side of it. But I want to help people too.
I already help people. I mean, like, that's something I naturally do. That's what I do for work. It just comes naturally to me that I'm a helper. And, you know, something that I've always wanted to really get into was hospice work. I had some experience of it working in the nursing home. And a lot of that deals with taking care of the families and letting them know their loved one is okay.
Mm-hmm.
When someone passes away, not just that person dying, a part of you dies too. So to me, that kind of, you know, ignited that drive again I once had, that I just kind of put to the side for a while, that I wasn't going to pursue it. You know, is that a calling to me too? Is that something saying, you know, go back and start working towards that goal? I don't know. But I do know that was an experience I can't explain. And I feel that, you know, as my quote said before, synchronicity happened.
Synchronicity's been a big part of our life since we met.
Yeah.
Like everything just seems to fall into place with us. Just like us meeting was a whole bunch of synchronicities. Us getting into the paranormal was a whole bunch of synchronicities. And then this night was a bunch of synchronicities. And it's definitely, you know, it's something to, you can't just ignore it. Like we need to pay attention and kind of fall in the line, because the universe is trying to point us in a direction.
And that's what it is. It's like the universe is pointing towards something.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that. It was so cool because I had no, I guess no control. You had no control. We were aligned and put in place by some unknown force.
Yeah.
To complete a task that was somewhat related to what we were doing, but also not related. It just all fell into place. It was just, we were meant to be there when we were there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is amazing.
Yeah. Now, you know, the night wasn't necessarily over at that point. We decided, you know, it'd be a good idea to maybe take her down to the community room and do a spirit box session. Well, we didn't have our spirit box with us at the time, and so I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to run back out to the truck and get the stuff, and we'll, when I come back in, we'll go down to the community room. So as I'm leaving, I run into one of the employees, told her what was going on, what we planned on doing, and asked if it was okay if we used the community room. Well, it turned out it wasn't okay, for multiple reasons. We couldn't use the community room for one, they needed to close up and lock up. Two, because of COVID, residents were not allowed to have guests, and because our event was over, we were now considered guests. And finally, there had already been some complaints about our group being in the building at all. The residents were very afraid of COVID and didn't want us there. So they very politely asked us, please, you shouldn't do it tonight. You really shouldn't be here at all. We think you should leave. Okay, we don't want to cause trouble. That's fine. We understand. So I called Tanya, who was still with the resident, told her what was going on, and I guess you told her and said her goodbyes, exchanged information in case she needed to reach out to us, and that was pretty much the end of the night. I mean, as we were leaving, we ran into John and Carrie Ann again, told them what happened, and had a nice chat with them, and yeah, that pretty much ended the night. And then we had a half-hour ride home in which we talked about this nonstop, and we were up for like another 2-3 hours because we were kind of wired after that.
Oh yeah, that really sparked our energy.
We almost recorded this podcast that night, but we wanted to go through the audio first and see if we found anything else in there.
So yeah, so sometimes what we are expecting doesn't always happen, and sometimes we get the unexpected, which did happen.
Yeah.
Like I said, if it ended just with the ghost tour, the ghost investigation, I would have said, okay, this was fun. I definitely would do it again, but we caught nothing that would make me a believer.
Yeah, the 2 EVPs I thought were pretty good. Now, keep in mind, we had 2 hours of audio. These are the only 2 times that I heard anything come through that I could classify as an EVP, and so it's I don't think it's me looking for them or anything. I was listening to it, but most of the time when I heard them, I was doing other things while I was listening, and I just heard something. I was like, wait, that's not supposed to be there. So I went back and re-listened.
Now, I don't know what John and Carrie have caught on the recorders that they have, because we were using their recorders as well, and they collect them and then obviously go through them. But they do have a lot to go through. So
yeah, because they did 2 different investigations that weekend, and most weekends they do an investigation. So it takes them a while to get through their stuff. So I haven't heard anything about that yet.
But they did say that the following night was more activity, that they really got some good stuff. And that's amazing. I hope it continues. I hope it continues to be a big event. I don't know if that gentleman will be staying, or, I kind of hope that as time goes on, he moves on and goes, into better places. Maybe he was only staying there until his daughter was gone. Maybe he was going with her.
Yeah.
So who knows? Next time we go back, he might not be there.
Yeah, but if we do go back again, we do have 2 things we know to target, and that is this man and the Hatman.
The Hatman, which was awesome because no one really gave us a description. Obviously, they say a man. She gave us the description afterwards. So
which we then gave to John and Carrie Ann, and so that they kind of had a better idea of what they were encountering.
Because a shadow person is different from a human entity.
Yeah, shadow people were not ever human.
So, did this beings come around when she came around, or was this here prior to? I don't know. I would like to get more information. I obviously don't want to, bother the residents and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's something that, we are going to be respectful of. But hopefully, as these tours continue, maybe people will be more willing to open up. And we'll get more information that way.
Yeah, and, if we end up, I think we're going to end up going there again. I'd like to go back again. And, John and Carrie Ann will have had more experiences by that point, and maybe they'll have a better understanding of what's going on. Maybe we could help build off of that.
And we're definitely hoping to do more tours under Wyoming Valley Ghost Tours. We highly recommend them if you're in the area or
Yep.
you're from the area and you're looking to do an investigation. It's a great way of doing it, getting familiar with the equipment, like I said, getting familiar on how to do an investigation. You don't need to have any experience under your belt to do it.
Nope, they give you the rundown on what to do, and they help you out.
My only criticism, and this is just a personal criticism, they break you up into groups of 4. I think it's better if you have 4 people already in your group than having, strangers. Not that you don't, not that Sandy and Michelle were awesome. It's just I feel like you can collaborate better.
Yep.
With people.
And you feel more comfortable.
And you can kind of have like an idea of how you want to investigate, because everyone does things on their own. So it was kind of conflicting at times having 2 people do their own thing and then us do our thing, and you can hear each other, and it's kind of like a back and forth. It does kind of get muddled.
A little bit. Now, some of the areas there were different rooms we could go in that helped with that.
Yeah. But when you're all in one room, 2 people want to do their own thing, and then you want to do your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of gets that was too much for me. I think I would prefer it if we had our own group of 4, and then we can collaborate beforehand and be like, this is what we're gonna do, and go from there.
Especially if it's someplace that we've been to before and we kind of know what to expect and what the rooms are. So, currently they have the Wyoming Valley Ghost Tours has the Theater at North, the Mary Stigmeyer Mansion, and the Frederick Stigmeyer Mansion. They are adding the Scranton Cultural Center, which is part of the Masonic Temple in Scranton. That I was hoping to have that done by the time we did this podcast, but they haven't announced the dates yet. That one we are definitely doing. That's a very haunted building in Scranton. That I've heard stories my entire life of that being haunted. So I'm very excited to get into that one when they announce the dates. And as far as shadow people go, and the Hatman in particular, if you're looking for more information, check out Astonishing Legends episode 26. They do a full, I think it's a 2.5 hour episode just on shadow people, and the Hatman is one of the shadow people that they talk about. So yeah, that was our experience, and it was amazing.
Definitely. And hopefully we'll have more to share, because we have more events coming up.
Yep.
And we're also planning on doing some local investigations throughout Pennsylvania.
Yep, we don't have anything currently planned for March, so we're probably going to do some of the local stuff. There's a couple cemeteries that have apparitions seen in it. The Suskin Road Screamer. We have a whole book that we just got on the Luzerne and Lackawanna counties, the ghost legends and lore. So we have quite a few that are in there that we're going to go check out as the weather gets nicer.
And then once we do all that, we'll combine those things and do another podcast just on that alone.
Yep. So that's all we have for you tonight. Until next time, have a good evening.
Good night.